Good morning, Kate. You can hear me?
Yes, I sure can. I can hear you great.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. I wish I had thought about this before. I could have given you each a halo light for Christmas. You know, a halo light is what all the kids use.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Makes everybody look like a superstar, a model when you're online. So I'll put those in my Amazon cart for you. Oh my goodness. Well, we're going to get going because it is already 8 minutes after 11 and we've had some people join us a little bit early. I see some great guests with us today. I'm so excited that you all found your links in your email and were able to click and join us today here during what might be your lunch period. And hang tight too, because tomorrow, as a reward for joining us here on the Zoom resident panel discussion today, you're going to get a soup and sandwich lunch delivered to your door tomorrow. So Chef Matt is working on that for us, and it is excited to share a special Christmas treat in the bag as well. So we're going to get started, and I'm going to click us on to our next slide. Oops. Maybe, there we go. First, we want to introduce our panel of guests, our residents who have joined us to share their thoughts and opinions. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about where all of our information is coming from, give you a chance to ask questions. Also keep in mind that Rebecca Shake, our residency counselor, is paying attention to your chat questions that you type in with the chat feature, and she's going to either interject when appropriate or kind of hold those questions to the end, as we might answer them as we go along. And then we also have a quick live poll for you to take at the end of the presentation today. So we're excited that we've kind of figured that feature of Zoom, and we can share it with you. I promise you it's super duper easy. As long as you can use your mouse, you're good. So let's start. I know when we talked last week, we kind of talked about me introducing all of you, but I think if you would, I think it would make sense for you to each introduce yourselves, just your name, how long you've lived here at Westminster Village, and I think that what our guests would like to probably know is what kind of residence are you in here? Villas, apartments, if you want to share what kind of apartment you live in, that would be awesome as well. Betty, you're at the top of my screen. You want to start?
Certainly, I'd be happy to. My name is Betty Martin. I've been at Westminster Village for just about 5 years now. I was a librarian in the community before coming here. And let's see, what else did you want to know about me? Besides how long I've been here?
Maybe the type of residence that you live in.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I am in an apartment in the Central Large building, and I found it very comfortable, and I'm using a walker, so it makes it very easy for me to get up and down and get around.
And Youngs, do you want to go ahead?
Go.
Usually she goes first. I'm Frank Young. I taught at Rose-Hulman for 15 years, and we've been here for 6.5 years, I think. And we live in a villa. We managed to move from a 4-bedroom house to a villa without too much trouble. We feel that it's spacious. It's a nice place to be. The only problem that I can see is that we have to walk outside to go to the dining room in the main building, and it's cold.
Okay, so I'm Julie Young, and most of what he said applies to me. I was over in the big building the other day when it was really, really nasty outside, and I said to one of the people there, "This is the day I really wish I lived in the big building." Done.
Go right ahead, Mary.
I'm Mary Halsted, and I live in the big building, have a 2-bedroom apartment up on the taller floor, the 7th floor, facing east. Love it. I've been here for 7 years and worked at Union Hospital for 20 before we moved in here, and love it.
So we have some very experienced and knowledgeable residents. Y'all know what you're talking about, you know, when you answer our questions. So to give you all a little bit of background, these residents have participated throughout the year in a sounding board survey that has been conducted by our management company, Life Care Services. So, you know, Westminster Village, to give you just a little additional deeper background, is a not-for-profit community. Of course, we are run by our local board of directors, and our board hired a company called Life Care Services to run day-to-day operations and serve as our management company. So Life Care Services kind of reached out to residents within their communities across the country and sought some folks to participate in a series of surveys they called Sounding Board that they conducted then in 2020. I think, of course, when it started out, they didn't intend for we weren't aware of the pandemic happening, you know, and probably some of the questions changed then and the plans changed over throughout the year. But we're going to highlight and focus on kind of some of the results that came back from residents, again, across the country in 3 particular surveys that were conducted in July, August, and in November. Number 1 being focusing on health and wellness. Number 2, a lot on the pandemic and the community's response and preparedness. And then finally, a little bit more information about kind of the design of the building and how that played an effect on residents as we kind of are going through this pandemic time together. So we're going to jump in because we got a lot of information to share on survey number 1. Again, focusing on just the overall wellness of residents. And the key big question that was asked and feedback that came from it was in your feeling of the change in your overall health and wellness since moving into a senior living community. So I want maybe each of you to kind of would you say, and did you agree with these results, as 60% said that their overall health and wellness improved since moving into a community, or have you had no impact at all? Frank and Julie, do you want to start there?
I would very strongly agree with the 60% people who said that my health and wellness has improved, and that would be because of the incredibly good exercise classes, fitness center, fitness person who is here to encourage us to go to classes and to do exercises and to keep moving and to just live life to the fullest. So my answer is definitely it has improved.
I would just, oh, Frank, go ahead.
One thing that has to be mentioned is that if you have a health problem, there is physical therapy here in the building, and that makes a big difference. I know in my case, I destroyed a shoulder in a fall in Baltimore for reasons that I have no knowledge of. And the physical therapy that was here was very helpful. And the fact that I didn't have to go 3 miles away to get physical therapy was a big help.
I was introduced to the Wellness Center, the WAC here, after a knee replacement. I had never or rarely done regular exercise, and I got well so fast that they moved me up to the fitness center, and I never left it. The opportunity to have in-house equipment and classes and opportunity without driving all the way to Union Hospital twice a week was marvelous. And I got hooked, have never stopped.
I think I would just echo pretty much what has already been said. The one thing that I thought that stands out in my mind is I lived alone for 12 years after my husband passed away. And I know my nutrition in terms of food was not very good. I'd gotten to the point that I really was not preparing meals. And I know that particular part of it really improved when I moved to Westminster.
So kind of digging into that a little bit more, you know, you talked a lot about the fitness center and classes and things, and you mentioned food and nutrition, and you know, at Westminster, we take like all 8 dimensions of wellness into account, and some of those being kind of the opportunity to socialize and volunteer and such. And the survey itself, some of these things were noted as having a positive impact overall on someone's overall health and wellness. Having friends and socializing, the activities, obviously the fitness, eating, being cared for, access to healthcare. Do any of you agree, disagree, have a comment about the overall response on the different elements of wellness?
Socializing is number
Agree.
one.
Oh, sorry, Betty.
That's okay. I just was going to say that socializing, I think, is definitely number one. Being able to socialize. That's what everybody misses the most when we had to lock down a little bit with no dining room options. And so having friends and socializing is number one.
I often imagine during the pandemic sitting out in a home alone and being completely restricted if I was going to do the safe path. And I could not agree with Betty more. The socializing, the ability to walk out of your apartment when you want to see people is huge. And when you need quiet time, you shut the door. It's been the answer to the hunker down and stay home thing.
One of the things that I've noticed is that when you live alone or just a couple in a house that's sort of away from everything, even when it isn't away, you don't really know your neighbors because children have all grown up and they're all away. And so you don't, and the neighborhood has changed. And so what I found was that I had more friends here than I did in the home that we were living in. That made a big difference to me.
So I wanted to comment on the access to healthcare. I don't know if you can see, let's see, there's my beautiful cast. So when I fell before Thanksgiving, what I did was I called over to the person in the big building that handles health things. And I said, I need an x-ray. And so an x-ray person came over right to my villa, took the x-ray, said, yeah, it's broken. So I was really grateful for that. And of course, the ones at the top of the list, the availability of activities, the socializing, it's a biggie.
Kate, could I say one more thing about the socializing? I'm not sure that everyone realizes how rare it is to make a new friend after you're, say, 75. And I haven't made just one. I've got a wealth of new friends, and that's pretty amazing.
They keep coming as well as new residents move in, don't they?
Yes.
So, and Julie, what you were saying kind of leads us nicely into this next question that was taken on the survey. How helpful have you found the following community supports been to you during the pandemic? Residents who were polled cited things like the virtual exercise, COVID education, the medical supports. How do each of, and Julie, you shared your experience. Do the rest of you feel like you would you rank, I guess, these supports in the same way that others did?
Pretty much.
One thing that isn't,
Go ahead, Mary.
one thing that isn't on this list is the idea of supporting our neighbors who need support. And I happen to be medical power of attorney for another resident, and I had to deal with moving him from independent living to assisted living, deal with him being in the health center twice and hospital twice. And I'm still doing shopping for him. That's been an interesting experience because I believe in helping other people, but this is a situation where I'm actually obligated to help him. He needs it, and I'm perfectly willing to provide it. And that kind of thing is, I think, something that's more likely to happen here, particularly with those residents who don't have any close relatives nearby. We've had this happen several times, not with the same kind of medical power of attorney, but with very close friends that we've made here whose children have been a long way away or whose nephews and nieces have been a long way away. And eventually that distance required them to move away closer to their relatives. But we helped facilitate those moves. And they would have been up the creek without a paddle if we weren't here. And I think that we have a feeling that we can also rely on the people here that we befriended to do that if we actually need that kind of support.
Betty, did you have a comment that you wanted to share on the supports and helpfulness?
Just in terms of the virtual exercise classes, I'm hoping I'll continue those because that makes it really very easy for me in the morning to come down to a virtual exercise class right in my apartment. That's great.
I see a lot of those sorts of new things continuing even beyond the pandemic. It is very exciting. All right, let's move into survey number 2 was very much focused on the pandemic and the preparedness of the community itself, and gauging the residents' feedback on that and feelings. Jumping right in, overall, one of the questions they asked was, how would you rate your community's handling of the complexities of the pandemic? I added to this slide some of the parties that are involved in the handling of the pandemic here at Westminster Village, give everybody an idea of the kind of broad scope of professionals who are engaging. Betty, I think you had a thought about this and how you're a strong thought about how we handled the pandemic here.
Yes, I thought the very first thing that was done was an excellent idea, and that was limiting all access and in any way, coming or going for anybody, staff, independent caregivers, residents, in that we had one entrance and that was what everybody used. And that helped to facilitate who was able to come into and out of the community to the extent that the management and staff had a good handle on what was going on. I thought that was an excellent move.
This question was a little bit more about staying informed and the communication that the community shares. Is your community currently doing enough to keep you informed about COVID-19? Mary, how do you feel about this one?
I don't see how they could have done more. You notice the percentage on this slide. I get an email and a call daily, except on weekends, unless there's some sort of news. And I feel completely informed. We also are told on these calls and emails the number of current cases, and they are very clear on, we have this many active and the numbers are extremely small. They're divided into independent living, staff, and healthcare. And it's very reassuring, I think, to the bulk of the listeners.
Actually, when the pandemic first hit us in March, I think we were very, very fortunate with the controls in place that we really didn't have any cases of COVID until after the second surge started. And I think that that's an excellent record and should be noted. And even after the second surge, it has not been any very dramatic increase, and it's been very controlled.
Yes.
Is there anything that you could cite that you would attribute that to?
I think the crucial thing is that the administration here recognized that it was not a matter of if we were going to become infected, but when. They recognized that it was impossible to be 100% free of the disease. And so the idea was to institute appropriate procedures that would reduce the probability of any serious problems.
I would say also, Kate, that the performance of the staff who have had to curtail their outside activities to maintain the level of safety we have is extremely impressive. It shows me that they care. They care about their jobs and they care about the residents.
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing. The next slide talks a little bit more about the feeling of safety. And with this, I kind of also want to address, restrictions, because I know that many of our prospective residents that Rebecca and I talk to regularly, have that perception, of, there being severe restrictions and and locking in your apartment and things like that. So as you kind of speak to this question and slide, how do you currently feel within your community? And do you feel that the restrictions put in place have been maybe too strict or too severe? What are your feelings on that, Betty?
First of all, those who know me well know I'm a very independent person. And I've been, through my years that I've been here, I've still been continuing all of my community volunteer activities. And of course, when we did reach the lockdown, those had to cease. But then so did just about everything else in the community slow down and come to a stop. And I felt that the safety and preventing the spread of the disease certainly outweighed any need that I may have to exert my independence and take off and just do what I thought I wanted to do. So I haven't really felt that it's been too restrictive, because it's worked for me. And as I said, I'm a pretty independent person.
I've been impressed with the fact that restrictions fluctuate depending on the level of in-house COVID and occasionally the outside community. So it hasn't been continual restrictions. When we're doing well, we have more freedom, and when there needs to be some containment, then there are a few more restrictions. So it's not like they do not respond to what's happening. I've appreciated that.
One of the things that needs to be mentioned is we're not in jail here. You have the freedom to violate the restrictions. It's not advisable. You shouldn't do it, but nobody is essentially looking over your shoulder and forbidding you from doing anything that is stupid. So we have some people who have actually been stupid, and some of them have paid a price for it. But for the most part, the restrictions have been, please do this. This is what we recommend. This is what you should do for your safety and the safety of others in the community. And as far as I'm concerned, that appeal is a pretty reasonable one.
I feel very safe. I feel like the administration cares about us, makes sure that we are in a safe environment, and they have loosened up on some of the restrictions, but I feel like the restrictions were necessary. They said, please don't go be with your family at Thanksgiving, and we obeyed that. And I'm hoping that people will also do that at Christmas. I know it's a sacrifice, but you got to do it.
I was just going to add that my friends that are still living in their own homes are still out in the community. They are also abiding, those of them who are being cautious, and many of them are being very cautious. They are instilling in their own households some of the same, quote, restrictions that we have been following here.
Mhm.
So I'm not so sure that our restrictions are any harder than those that are self-imposed by people who are living out in the community.
Good point.
Good point. That's a very good point.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing. Now we're jumping into the third survey. The third survey was on really the design of the building and the structure, and we're going to talk a little bit about spaces. I mean, in the beginning, oh, not so bad. We're a couple months of this, and and we'll get through. Now we're 8-9 months later, and I'm sure many people are in their homes, tired of looking at the same four walls. So we want to talk a little bit more about the many walls, I guess, at Westminster Village and the other areas. Also, I think a part of this survey was to kind of help us help all communities across the country determine, should something like this happen again, what kind of adjustments should we make to our communities, to make it better for our residents and make it a better and more positive environment. So I appreciate the fact that Life Care Services is trying to gather information to learn and plan for the future as well. But as we jump in here, one of the questions focused on the different areas and amenities within the community. What have you been utilizing and taking advantage of? What has worked well, and what areas don't work so well during a pandemic? Mary, what are your thoughts on spaces?
Well, Kate, as the head of the library committee, I received 9%. It was more like 75% for me. The other thing that my friends and I made use of were what they're describing as elbows. I love that word. The lounge on each floor. We would meet there, 4 or 5 of us, where we can socially distance and wine and cracker parties. Nobody says you couldn't, and it made for a little different socializing that we looked forward to every week. Also, I did a lot of hall walking, still do, and have learned where everyone lives pretty much and who I'm going to run into. So yes, I vary a little from this, but I think everybody does.
I just wanted to add to this, as a former librarian, the library here is really probably one of our stellar activities, at least it is for me. And by the way, it's open 24 hours because you can get into the library and check out a book at any time that you may decide you want to read. And reading during a pandemic and having access to a library is probably number 1 on my list of things.
Same here.
I've also enjoyed the elbow areas, as Mary had talked about, but I think probably number 1 for me is the library.
Yeah, our library never shut down, did it? It was always
Never.
And at the top of the list, of course, is outdoor spaces and walking. Julie, from my office, I see you and Mary take those laps every single day. I know you're out there walking as well. Tell us a little bit more about all the outdoor stuff that has been happening here.
Well, it's not just me. I look out my window and I see people walking. 2 people just walked by. It's a lovely place to walk. You don't have to worry that you're going to be run over. When we lived on Hellman Street, I never could walk on Hellman Street because there was no sidewalk and it was not safe. It's very safe here. So I see that outdoor walking exercise is number 1 on the list, but I also make great use of our library. I'm not a librarian, but not only do we have large print books, but we have CDs, DVDs, all those things. So you wanted about outdoor spaces. I noticed some friends when the weather was a little warmer, meeting at the gazebo. We have 2 gazebos, and you can be there with your friends. You can be social distance, and some of our friends were having a little get together, and I'm not sure we were doing that before the pandemic.
Good point.
It is.
Yes, there are a lot of neat things, new things that have come out of this, aren't there?
Yes.
It's, fine. And I think taking a little bit more time, but yeah, especially that group, like you mentioned, who gets together in the gazebo may not have spent that much time to getting to know each other if it weren't for this situation that we're in here. Excellent. Okay, let's see. What do we got on our next slide here? All right, so now we transition kind of our thoughts to those higher levels of care. We know that this is where the news media is blasting senior living, and much to our dismay. And so tell me, I guess, what you know about our assisted living level, those licensed, that health and rehab center level of care. What experience have you had yourself, or maybe another resident has had with those levels of care during this pandemic time?
Well, my friend who is currently in assisted living and was in the health center, there were times when I could not get in to see him because those facilities were closed down. But what I found was that the administration around here did everything they could to make it possible for certain visitations to take place. So I am now a essential family caregiver, even though I'm not essential, not family, and not a caregiver. But I can now get into the assisted living area because they are allowing visitation by essential family caregivers. And the administration was very good at making sure that even though they had procedures to restrict access, that they understood that exceptions had to be made. And that whole idea that you deal with individuals as appropriate seems to pervade the administration around here. And I have a monthly meeting as president of the Residents Association with the executive director. And what I've noticed is that he and the other people who are directors and other positions around here are very responsive. So that the issue of what level of care you are in, the issue of your abilities aren't really issues here, because people will be helpful. People will assist you in whatever way is possible. There are a lot of people around here who use walkers or use scooters. And I have a joke that I say whenever somebody's walking towards me with a scooter, riding towards me with a scooter or walking towards me with a walker, I say, you have a walker, you have the right of way. You get first ahead of me. And because I know that at some point I will probably be in a walker or a scooter. Hopefully not soon. But the way people interact with other people who have needs is very helpful. And when you consider what you would do in your own house, you can't do the things that you can do here in your own house. And so the level of care and the level of assistance that you need are not relevant to your enjoyment of life.
And Mary, I think too, you had an experience of maybe of a friend, another resident here to share. I know certainly everybody has lost someone during this time, and how do we deal with that here at Westminster Village, Mary?
I have seen great compassion from everyone, but from administration in the healthcare center. And that is sort of like an institution, and yet there was great compassion in providing a private setting for my friend and his dying wife to spend time every day in a room where they could sing and say whatever they wanted. And it was very moving, and I know that it meant everything to him.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I know it's been sad. Many of the stories we read about people potentially dying alone.
Yes.
I know that we've made every effort that we can here at Westminster Village to get family in when we know that that's happening, when we know someone is passing. So thank you for sharing that story as well. All right, our next slide is about food. Everybody needs to eat. We all need to consume nutrition. We need groceries, lots of cooking, I think, going on, more cooking going on at home, in most homes than usual during this time. Tell us about dining at Westminster Village during pandemic. Betty, what has been your overall impression and thoughts on this?
Well, I think a lot of credit needs to be given to the entire staff in the kitchen and the serving people, because they have pitched in and done a wonderful job. At the beginning of at the worst of the lockdown situation, they delivered our meals, lunch and dinner, and they worked out a wonderful system for getting meals to us quickly, and that we got what we wanted. And then as it became possible, they made provisions for how we could get into the dining room, make reservations, and so that we know how many people would be there. They could set up the tables. So I would just say that the staff has made dining a high point of every day, really.
Yes.
And that's been a chance for us to interact with somebody. And I know there are some residents who have not been out of their apartments very often. So this gives them one contact a day or two that really makes their life more interesting. So I would just say that and everybody cares about what they're going to eat. And during a pandemic, this becomes a #1 priority with everyone, I think. And it has really been handled extremely well.
Yes.
I have no complaints.
No complaints.
No.
And Frank and I like to go out to eat. And of course, during the pandemic, we have not gone to a restaurant since like February, I think. So we go over to the dining room and we have our own very nice restaurant here. Lots of choices. I think even the pickiest eaters can find something that they will enjoy. And the service is really good. You don't tip. It's an incredibly good situation, and I am very grateful for it.
One of the things that I've noticed is that in a restaurant, if you go along a large number of times, you get to know some of the wait personnel, but it's difficult. Here, we really know the wait personnel and people who are in the kitchen. We really know them, and they know us, and there's good relationship. I don't think there's any restaurant in town except one where you would have a relationship with everybody working in the restaurant and sort of know them, maybe not by name, but by their face, and they would know you. That's really neat around here. I really enjoyed that.
And Mary, I know obviously we have the dining room, our club room. We did kind of close down to just kind of manage and mitigate spread. But what about, so I think a lot of people don't realize we have our village store here, our shop. How did that help you during the pandemic time?
Well, one of the things I missed and still do miss is going to the grocery. I've always liked that. And the store really saved me from it allowed me to do some cooking in my own apartment, which I also enjoy. And they supply basics, but they also added some meats that you could cook, and accommodation. They expanded as it was necessary to meet our needs. And in the worst of times, they would deliver it to your apartment. So I was very grateful for that. And I know a lot of people agree with me. I also wanted to zip back one instance to the dining experience and reading, because there are days when reading the weekly menu is the highlight of the day, and my reading experience. So fun.
I love it. It's the little things that we didn't,
Yes.
yeah, we didn't pay attention to before. So highlighted in a situation. All right.
Just one thing I wanted to add to that, Kate. When Frank was talking about getting to know the wait staff, the wait staff gets to know us very well
Yes.
in terms of our little peculiarities, what we like, what we dislike, and they almost think of what we want before we can even ask for it. And that is really very nice.
One more addition, Kate. Since Betty brought up the dining and the opportunity to have a glass of wine has been big in our circles.
Okay, so this
When
is,
you can't come to the dining room for your wine, they bring it to you.
Yes.
Yes.
okay, so this is a final thought. I see that on
Yes.
the slide.
Yes, go right ahead.
I have several friends and my sister, all of whom live in retirement communities. And I spend some time comparing notes with them. And what I have found is that overall, the restrictions that we are under all over the country, the same restrictions. And I feel like our administration has done a really incredible job as far as keeping us informed, keeping us safe. And how do I feel about my choice to live at Westminster Village? Best decision we ever made.
Yep.
And I would echo that. I would echo that.
Same here.
My parents moved in here when they were in their late 80s. We moved in here when we were in our mid 70s. Our decision was the right one. Their decision was the wrong one.
Is there anything in particular that I missed that you had in your kind of your thoughts that you wanted to share? Do you feel like we covered? No?
I think you did a good job.
Very
Okay,
good.
and very well. Rebecca, what kind of questions did you collect from our viewing audience? Oh, unmute yourself.
I thought I did. I'm sorry, I missed the button. I didn't actually get many questions, so I would encourage people that if they do have questions and you're viewing this, please feel free to pop those questions in. But Sherry Daly did have a comment early on, especially when we were talking about the transparency and the calls that we get every day. And she wanted to state that it's most impressive in the transparency with regard to the information we receive. Friends in other facilities have no information about number of cases, deaths, etc. So that was one thing she wanted me to note. That was really truly at the beginning. Well, while people are still thinking about questions, I'm going to go ahead and put this poll out here so people can answer this. All you have to do is click the answer that you feel is best relevant to you, and it'll pop through on my end. All right.
This is a cool feature.
It is really neat.
The first question is, do you feel that we have corrected any misconceptions with our discussion today? You can easily just use your mouse and click yes or no. Second question, I would consider making a move to a retirement community in the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, unknown. And then once you click your choices, you hit submit. Only you and then Rebecca can see answers.
Quite a few that have voted. I'll give you a few more minutes.
How are we looking? You think we have them all in?
We have about 7 out of 16 that have voted or have gone through and chose their selections. Give them maybe one more minute, give everybody a chance.
Appreciate all of you taking the time to not just to participate in the surveys all year long here, but obviously to share kind of your thoughts in response to the overall data that we collected. It was in looking at all the surveys, I think kind of all agree it was a lot of information, and we just really tried to pare it down to the things that we felt like our prospective residents and our audience would be most kind of interested in. And we knew that the pandemic and what's really going on here at Westminster Village during this time was going to be of most interest. So thank you for sharing how you've managed during this time and how you feel Westminster Village has responded also. How are we?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. I know we do have some residents that have joined us today. So of course they're answered. They're not, or they don't feel the need to answer.
Sure.
All right. Well, I do appreciate everybody taking the time. It does look like about 88% of you said that we did correct any misconceptions with our discussion today. There's 13% that said that we did not. If you have a question or have heard anything that maybe we should go over, please feel free to put that in the Q&A or in the chat box. But I certainly appreciate you answering that question. That was a big one.
Good. Well, again, and thank you all our viewers for joining us today. You can look forward to a lunch delivery to your door tomorrow for joining us and taking the time here. Also, want you I want to highlight for you our Westminster Village Cares incentive. Our prospects should have received a nice letter from our board of directors in the mail. It looks kind of like this. With a really nice holiday message, introduces you to all of the people who are on our board. Also, they highlighted an extension of our Westminster Village Cares incentive, which is a full move package for free. So your consultation, your packing, your moving, your unpacking, all free, all paid for by Westminster Village if you reserve your apartment home before the 1st of February. So it did end at the end of November. We've extended it now to the 1st of February. So take advantage of that by calling Rebecca or me and reserving your apartment home. Next year, we're celebrating our 40th anniversary here at Westminster Village. 40 years of being so open. So, that's exciting. Why not make the 40th year your year to join and move in with us here? And we hope that you all certainly have a very safe and a very Merry Christmas. Thank you again for your time and for joining us. We hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Kate.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.